Hari Om Tat Sat. To dear friends, it has been an unique moment in our life. Swamiji Advayatmananda has graced our place, and we all saw all of his 7 lectures that he gave at the Arts Vidya Gurukulam. It is not that easy of a subject, and some of us, we had some questions. 7 questions were given to Swamiji, and the 8th question, Swamiji, if I may take your permission to read it to you, and if the time permits, and I know it's not possible, but still, if it does, then the 8th question is, half plus half equal to 1, and billion over billion is 1. Both sides of the equations are satisfied. I'm still fumbling with what is half and what is billion. For this, there is one more mantra, Ano Bhadra Kratavo Yantu Vishwata. I'd like to have request Swamiji for Padacheda and grammatical aspect of it. Let me tell you, whosoever has asked this question, I'm not here to decide on Swamiji, but this itself is a couple weeks course. But let Swamiji decide. As a matter of fact, all of every word of it is couple weeks or couple of months.
Which shloka is that again?
Ano Bhadra Kratovo Yantu Vishwataha. Okay.
We'll see what we can do.
Let me request Puja Swamiji to guide us further. Let me make him the speaker. All right, sir. You are on. Swami.
All right, very good. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Sahaviryang Karvavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvushavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you for the kind introduction. I'm very happy to be here. Very happy that you had a chance to see the recording. My version of the video was not very good. I hope yours was better. I don't know, it was very oversaturated, at least the video, but hopefully the content came through. So looking at these questions, thank you for sending them. I think what I'd like to do is skip question 1 and 2 and put it at the end for now, and see how much time we have for that. Okay. To be honest, the first questions are related, right? The sadhana chatushtaya is 4-fold, and shamadhamma paratitiksha shraddhan samadhanam is a subset of the of those 4, curiously, right? So it's viveka vairagya shatka sampattihi, and then mumukshutvam, and then the third one contains all 6 of these. So we can talk about how to address that going forward, but I thought we'd start with question 3, if that's okay.
Sure, absolutely. Would you suggest me to project the question or not?
I can read them if you like, whatever you prefer.
Well, that will be fine. So
okay.
We're not distracted.
Okay. So question 3, why is Carterwakanda not learned or taught before Anaconda? So this is referring to the Veda. So one way to look at the Veda is that, or Vedas, Veda, collective singular, is that there's 2 sections. The Carterwakanda, Kanda means section. The Kanda, the Karma, the Kanda, the section of the Veda that focuses on action. And then the Jnanakanda is the Uttarakanda, which is the latter portion of the Veda, which focuses on knowledge. So it's called Jnanakanda or Uttarakanda. And then the Purvakanda is the Karmakanda. So the first section, which is by far the most voluminous, includes the mantras themselves, the Samhita, the Aranyakas, and the Brahmanas and Aranyakas. You don't have to worry about all those details. But basically, the last sliver of the Vedas is called the Gnanakanda, which really is just the Upanishads. And they don't need to be studied sequentially. In fact, this is discussed in the first sutra of the Brahma Sutra, Atato Brahma Jigyasa. It says, the question arises after, so now, thereafter, there is the inquiry into Brahman. And there's a lot of discussion about thereafter what, right? And so some would posit that it's after studying the first portion of the Veda. But really, it's actually after gaining the adhikaratvam. So adhikaratvam is presented in one form in the sadhana chatushtayas. Adhikaratvam means the preparedness, right? So after preparing oneself in a certain manner, one can approach the study of the Jnanakanda, the Upanishads, which is Vedanta, right? Because the books that are Vedanam Antaha, the books that are at the end of the Vedas, are the Upanishads, right? So that's the Jnanakanda. And the reason why we don't have to study the Karmakanda before the Jnanakanda, we don't have to study about all the rituals and actions, etc., is because really they have different purposes, different topics, and different audiences. So the purpose of the Jnanakanda, meaning the Upanishads, Vedanta, the purpose of that is to gain freedom from struggle, freedom from suffering, and that's gained through knowledge, through self-knowledge. The Karmakanda is abhyudayartham. It's for the sake of prosperity, here and in the hereafter, right? And it's gained through action and rituals. Moksha is not a product. The liberation, freedom from struggle and suffering is not a product of an action. It's a function of knowledge. And so we look at these two very differently because they have different topics, right? The Jnanakanda, its subject matter is that which is immediately available for direct recognition and direct verification. It's yourself, right? Atma, self, is me. And so I'm available here for making a mistake about myself. I can confuse myself with what I'm really not, and I can take myself to be other than what I truly am. And therefore I suffer. There's a superimposition of anatma upon the atma, the not self upon the self. And the truth of myself, right? I'm available to make an error about myself. I'm here and I'm available. Atma is available to inquire into what is the truth of myself and what is the truth of the jiva, the individual, what is the truth of the world, and what is the truth of Ishvara, or the Jagat Karanam, the cause of the world. And the truth of myself is available for verification because I'm right here, right? And so the Jnanakanda, the Upanishads, are a means of knowledge to understand one's true nature. And so the Shastra meaning the teaching, in the form of the Upanishads, the 10 Upanishads, the Bhagavad Gita, and a number of other supplementary texts, the Brahma Sutra, and other Prakarana Granthas or supplementary texts. It's considered a mirror that the teacher holds up so that the student can see themselves, okay? The Karmakanda, in contrast, have subject matters which are not necessarily immediately available for direct verification, right? They talk about they discuss topics such as, is there a hereafter? Yes, there's a hereafter. What are after-death experiences like, right? They say that there is such a thing called swarga, heaven, and that going to heaven going, is a possibility and is gained through the performance of certain rituals or meditations, right? Yajnas and upasanas. And through performing dharma, by living harmoniously, you can increase your punya so much, you can increase your adrishtapala, which is called punya, the subtle results of action, ritual, religious action, or even living a good life, living a life that's in harmony with the givens in your life, the people in your life, etc. Choosing ahimsa over himsa, right? Focusing on non-injury and compassion, etc. Those gain you certain cosmic brownie points called papa, I don't know if you know what brownie points are. So it's old school. Brownies is a subset of the Girl Scouts in America here. So brownie points, I sometimes use references that I'm sure nobody else gets. But anyway, you get these certain, this credit. And through that credit, the Karmakanda focuses on gaining that credit, the punya, so you can go to heaven, right? And they say there is such a thing as transmigration. You can go to heaven or elsewhere, Naraka, but your credit will always run out. And so it's always a one-way ticket. There's no idea of an everlasting heaven in this tradition, right? And therefore the subject matter is not immediately available, right? We'll figure it out when and if we get there, the afterlife. The afterlife experience is not particularly interesting, many of us find, because the problem is samsara. The problem of our suffering, samsara the word for what we're trying to free ourselves from. Moksha means liberation. We ask liberation from what? Liberation from bandha, from bondage, and samsara. Samsara, cosmologically, from a larger perspective, is called repeated sickness, old age, and death. Birth, sickness, old age, and death, right? Always coming back to problematic situations. Many of us are less concerned about the afterlife, and if there really is reincarnation or transmigration, which we'll talk about. We're more interested in relieving suffering right here, because we're interested in jivan mukti, being liberated while alive, right? And we let the afterlife take care of itself if there is one. And these two sections, the Purvakanda and Uttarakanda, or the Karmakanda and the Jnanakanda, they have different audiences. Somebody who's interested in the rituals are people who believe that by modifying their situation or their experience, they're going to seek, by seeking the results of good action, leads to a modification of my potentially my current experience and my afterlife experience, and this is the greatest good, right? So I perform religious actions for the sake of an abundance, abhyudaya, either here or in the hereafter, okay? And it presents unknown means to known ends, right? There's certain rituals you can do, putra kameshti. Supposedly there's rituals to be done if you're having troubles becoming pregnant. And so there's certain rituals to be done, they say, for that. So that's an unknown ends, right? We don't know how to do these rituals, so the Karmakanda tells us how, for known ends, right? Desire for a child. There's also, the Karmakanda gives us unknown means to unknown ends, right? We don't know there's a Swarga unless some scripture tells us about it. There's a heaven without somebody telling us about it. So the first portion deals with that. It deals with what can be accomplished through action. The trick is that, the problem is that anything that comes through that is a result of action is necessarily impermanent. And we don't want just a vacation from suffering. We want a complete eradication of suffering, right? So those people who are focused on the Karmakanda still think that by changing my experience, changing my situation, I'm going to gain the greatest good. And that just doesn't hold water, because all experience changes, all situations change. The Jnanakanda, the audience for the Jnanakanda, for the Upanishads, for Vedanta, are mumukshus and jignasus. So mumukshu is one who wants liberation, and the jignasu is one who knows how to get it. Meaning what? So mumukshu, moktum ichuhu, the one who desires liberation. That's who the audience for Vedanta. Basically, mumukshus, people who desire liberation, are those who've seen through the folly of trivial pursuits, right? And who suspect that there might be permanent solution to fundamental human problems, struggle, and suffering. And the Shastra says, you are the problem and you are the solution. And so a mumukshu, someone who is a spiritual aspirant, recognizes that there may be a solution, and the Shastra calls it moksha. Now, those of us who are seekers, or mumukshus, often don't know what we're seeking, right? And so we can be pulled into there's a huge, quote unquote, spiritual market that's trying to sell you a bill of goods, either in terms of a belief system or sell you more crystals or whatever people think spirituality is. There's a lot of offerings there, and you can spend your entire life sampling or going down a rabbit hole on a path that's really not going to get you where you need to go. So a jignasu, one who desires knowledge, is a mumukshu, is a seeker, but a jignasu is one who understands that the problem is not solved by the acquisition of more experiences, by pushing things away or pulling things towards me. It's based on knowledge, that moksha is self-knowledge, that liberation is in the form of atma-jnana or self-knowledge. So the audience is different for both of those. Now, for a mumukshu, for someone who's a spiritual aspirant, it's said that the devotional rituals, the upasanas, the meditations that are presented in the first portion of the Veda may be helpful in gaining preparedness for self-knowledge, for becoming adhikari, for becoming one who has the character, has the antakarana shuddhi, the purity of mind, in other words, the mind, in other words, one's ragas and dveshas, one's desire system, one's desires and aversions, don't really push and pull on one's heart, that one finds a relative natural contentment and a chittanaishchalya, a relative contemplativeness. So a neutralized set of desires, right? Transforming desires into preferences is a big part of it. Emotional maturity is preparedness. Chittanaishchalya means a contemplativeness, because we need to be able to still the mind such that we can appreciate the truth of ourselves. And so the qualifications for the Carterwakanda and the Anaconda are different. To do certain rituals, you have to be a Krishna Kesha. You have to have black hair, right? And you have to be a householder for many of them, etc. So the audience is different, the intention is different, and what one does with the knowledge that is given in the Karmakanda versus the Jnanakanda are different. And so there's no necessity to study the Karmakanda, the rituals and the chanting and all that to gain knowledge. So question number 2, Sukshma Sharira migrates. Is it a faith? Yes. So we have this term Shraddha. Shraddha is often translated as faith, but faith is brings so much baggage with it. So there's 2 types of Shraddha you can think of in terms of what is that is beneficial to someone. The Shastra, the teaching, is considered a pramana, a means of knowledge, in two areas. If I have Shraddha, which is sometimes translated as Shastra Pramana Buddhi, if I have the recognition that the scriptures have something profound to tell me, right? If I understand that the scriptures are a unique means of knowledge, they're a unique means of knowledge for 2 things. They're a unique means of knowledge for the self. And if that's the case, if I'm looking for moksha and I see that my answer might lie in the teaching of Vedanta, then I'm interested in self-knowledge. And so I expose myself to the pramana, I expose myself to the teaching, to the means of knowledge, and I allow that Shastra, as presented by the Guru, that teaching, to guide me through the necessary self-inquiry to discover the truth of myself. And that takes a certain type of Shraddha, but it's not a faith. If you believe that you are Atma, you're never going to see that you are Atma. Faith will undermine the process of inquiry that's necessary to explore who I take myself to be and reveal what I am and what I am not. So the Shraddha really is a trusting inquisitiveness. The Shraddha is better translated in terms of gaining self-knowledge, is better translated as a trusting inquisitiveness. I trust that the Shastra and the teacher have something profound to tell me, and it takes the form of an inquiry, and it's a trust pending verification. Okay, so it's not a belief system. It's a knowledge system. If someone comes up to you and says, believe, I would turn around and walk the other way. Because what are they selling you? What do you have to believe in, right? In terms of moksha. Now, Shraddha also can mean a faith in regard to those things that we cannot immediately verify. Like there's a heaven. I've never met anybody who's gone to heaven and come back. And even if there was somebody who claimed to go to heaven and come back, I still have to believe what that person said, because I'm not in a position, thank heaven, right now, to verify if there's a heaven or not. Or transmigration, right? I've Shraddha, I've trust that Shastra is revealing a truth that I cannot verify for myself at this moment. And that's called faith, if you will, or Shraddha. And we can, like I said, we can verify transmigration or the lack of it when the time comes. I find that the model of transmigration is the best model I found regarding a potential afterlife. It doesn't make any sense to me that something as exquisite as the human, as a human being, will just vanish into the ether upon death. The Shastra says that's not the case, that the Sukshma Sharira, which inhabits the Stula Sharira, Sukshma means subtle. Sukshma means that which is not available for pratyaksha, for direct sensorial perception, right? I see I know my inner being in a self, and in a sense. So I know this physical body, but inside the body, so to speak, there's this living entity we call the jiva, and part of the jiva is the totality of the stula, the physical body, which is available for the five senses. The only way I know the body is through the five senses. But I also know my thought, my emotion, my memory. I know my ability to perceive things, jnanendrani. I know my karmendrani, the ability to interact with the world. I'm aware of these enlivening forces, pranas, such as circulation and breath and digestion, etc. And that's all part of this transmigrating Sukshma Sharira. And that's what the Shastra says, that is the one which takes on a body. Sri Krishna says, Vasamsi Jirnani. He says that just like someone throws away worn clothes and takes on new ones, the transmigrating being, the jiva, tosses off old bodies and takes up new ones. Right? And it's a very cogent model, it's a rational model, and the model of reincarnation and transmigration is beautiful in that it allows us to take responsibility for our current situation and our future situations. Right? If the law of karma, the law of cause and effect, operates, then the givens in my life are there for a reason. I earned them, whether they're pleasant or not. And so the law of karma and transmigration, which goes along with that, allows me to gracefully accept the unchangeable givens in my life, meaning that I'm born into a certain place at a certain time with certain parents and certain siblings, and those are givens in my life. How did those come about? Why did I get this sister and not that sister? Or this mother and not that mother? It's called grace. It's called prarabdha. It's called the fructification of your punya and papa. It's called the fructification of the results of your subtle actions, which are responsible for your current situation. And it actually empowers you in the future, because what you do today determines subsequent experiences in this life, in the afterlife, and perhaps in the next life. So it's a very powerful and beautiful model, but it is a matter of faith, because it's not immediately verifiable. I don't need to have faith that that the truth of myself is the truth of Ishvara, because I'm right here to investigate and understand the truth of myself. So there's Shraddha in two different ways. One is the trust that the teacher will lead you to an understanding by which you can say, aha, aham brahmasmi, I am Brahman. And then there's a Shraddha faith of it regarding that which is not immediately verifiable, and you have faith. but it's less important. It's much less important that I have faith that there is a heaven, etc., than recognizing the profundity of the statement that the Shastra with the teacher can lead you to an appreciation of yourself, of your inherent freedom, which is immediately understandable and verifiable. All right, there's no Atma out there. When I was giving these classes at the Gurukulam, I was talking to somebody, and he spoke to me in Sanskrit. I understood some of it, right? There's a beautiful Sanskrit Sambhashana movement, a conversational Sanskrit. So he was speaking Sanskrit, and I caught, I could nod my head. But then he came when I was eating, and he kept saying, he used these gestures. Atma, when we try to know the Atma, right? He was pointing out his palm out and away. And I kept saying, no, there's no Atma, it's Atma. I don't know if you can see me, right? Touching my chest. There's no Atma, there's Atma, right? This is the one we're talking about, the self-evident person, the self-shining awareness, which is right here. And so I just need to trust that in my Guru, trust in the Shastra, and see where it leads, right? See if it makes sense. And it's a transformative and all-encompassing process wherein one appreciates the truth of oneself, there's a process to remove vagueness and doubts, etc. And then contemplation upon that reality helps bring that understanding home. Okay, question 5. I think we're going pretty quickly, but maybe we can have some questions at the end. Question 5, we learn about Atma, or consciousness, presented in everything and everyone, but how do we prove it? Has anyone seen it or experienced it? So this question requires some additional framing, because Atma can never be seen or experienced. Atma is the unobjectifiable awareness, which is the truth of every experience. So the word chit, or chaitanya, or jnanam in satyam jnanam anantam brahma, that refers to who you are right now. And it is the subject to which everything comes to light. All objects are known because of the light of awareness. So awareness, even as the adhisthana, as the substratum of creation, is never going to be objectified. You can never pull awareness out and say, oh, there's Atma, there's awareness, because the person who is trying to say there is awareness is Atma. There's no way you can objectify Atma. The problem is that we take ourselves to be those things which are subject to objectification, right? I know the world. I know my car. And even the words talk about this. They express this idea that, I was driving on the freeway and somebody hit me. Did they hit you? No, they hit your car, right? And yet I know my car is just mama vahana, nandivat, shivasya, right? So it's like Shiva's nandi. It's just a vahana, it's just a vehicle. This vehicle, and yet they're like, because I have this mamata, I have this sense that that vehicle is mine, I can say somebody hit me. I also say somebody hit me if they hit me in the arm. But this body is as much a vahana, a vehicle, as that car is. And it is as much anatma as that car is. Anatma means not self. So we have this understanding that there is a subject and an object. And I take the objects in the world to begin where my skin ends, right? The world is outside. But this body is as easily objectifiable as the table or the car. Anything that is subject to objectification is not who you are. And the qualities of the things that are subject to objectification are not your qualities. And what do we objectify? What are objects of our cognition? What do we know? Any object that we know is not self. I know the chair, fine. The scripture doesn't have to tell me that I'm not a chair. If I felt myself to be a dog, the Shastra would have to say, no, you're not a dog, arf, arf, right? But I take myself to be this body. I take myself to be this mind. I take myself to be this emotion. I take myself to be the senses. If I am this body, then I enjoy the qualities of this body, and therefore I'm tall, I'm short, I'm fat, I'm skinny, I am born, I die. If I take myself to be the emotions, aham sukhi, aham dukhi, I am happy, I'm sad, I'm anxious, I'm calm. If I take myself to be the memory, I have a horrible memory. I'm very forgetful. Oh, I have a great Medha Shakti. I have great power of retention. Right? If I take myself to be my IQ, anything, notice those things. I know the body. How can I possibly say I am happy, I am sad, unless happiness and sadness are known to me? I'm interested in the one to whom the changing mind comes to light, right? By whom the changing mind is illumined. Awareness illumines all things that are objectifiable, and your thoughts, your emotions, your senses. I am blind. No, the eyes are blind. I'm sad. No, your heart is sad. But you know, you can only claim those things as yourself because you know them, and those things are in truth objects of your cognition, objects of awareness. And so we're interested in this awareness, which is unobjectifiable, which is the subject to all objects. Okay, so Atma will never be experienced because in every experience, in every perception, in every memory, there's awareness. I have sandwich awareness. I have music awareness. I have sadness awareness. I have brilliant thought awareness. Right? I have Wordle awareness. What's common in all those? Awareness, 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 awareness. And so awareness is pratibodha viditamatam. The Upanishad says awareness is present in every cognition, and that awareness is you. But what we want to do is extricate our identity from the anatma and recognize, which is those things which are physical or subtle that are objectifiable. And that's where I begin to understand the truth of myself. So first of all, the Atma is never going to be experienced. I do not need a unique experience to appreciate the truth of myself. I need to understand the truth of every experience. And Atma Chaitanya, which is Sat, which is existence itself, is present in every changing experience. And so you're never going to see or experience an external Atma because there is no external Atma, right? How do we recognize that awareness is the very unhidden substratum of the creation, right? So the question is, Atma is presented in everything and everyone, but how do we prove it? Has anyone seen it or experienced? So let's talk about that for a minute. It's not a matter for experience, it's a matter of knowledge. So first, one must recognize that this I subject, this I awareness, does not enjoy any identity with any object of cognition, which includes, like I just said, the body, minds, emotion, etc., nor their attributes. And this understanding is not to be theoretical. See, we're not making pizza here. Many people approach spirituality as if we're making pizza. I think I said something like this in the talks, right? And I mentioned that I got an ovation. The only time in a previous class at the Sailorsburg Gurukulam, the only time I ever got an applause, was when I gave a nice recipe for dosa. Everybody applauded when I gave that. So I switched between dosa and pizza. But the theory of pizza, the recipe for pizza, is not going to alleviate my hunger. I have to take that theory, that knowledge, and put it into practice through action to create a product. We're not doing that here. We're not creating moksha. We're not creating we're not liberating an actually bound self. We're recognizing that my sense of being bound by this body, mind, and senses is false. and we're trying to reveal what is, not create something that's new. Atma is already free. You are already free. It's just due to the anyonya dhyasas, due to the ignorance-born superimposition of taking the not-self as the self, that I become mortal, that I become bound, that I become sad and need to struggle. So samsara in this life is the struggle to arrange all of my ducks, put all of my ducks in a row, so that only thing that comes into my life is desirable things, and the only thing, and the things that are undesirable leave my life, right? That's struggle, that's samsara. And it's like being on a bubble. It's just unmaintainable. And the whole struggle is false. You are already what you seek to become, right? But that becoming is a function of knowledge, not a function of action. So this objectification, the recognize that I am awareness, cannot be theoretical. It needs to be intensely personal. So this Atma Anatta Vichara, this inquiry into what the self is and what the not self is, every time the teacher says you say I, and the Mahavakya, or one of the most famous sentences that summarizes all the teaching is Tattvamasi, you are Ishvara, you are that. The truth of you is the truth of the Lord, right? It's like saying that the truth of the individual wave is the same as the truth of the ocean. The jiva, the wave, is part and parcel of the ocean, but both the ocean and the individual wave are just forms superimposed upon a single water. And so too, this jivatvam, this individuality, and ishwaratvam, the jagat karanam, the cause of the creation, are simply forms superimposed upon this one sadvastu, this one real entity, which is called Brahman or Atma. They're really synonyms. Atma means the reality which is discovered when the inquiry starts from who am I, koham, what is the nature of jiva, of the individual. The word Brahman comes, and we'll talk about that, when the inquiry begins, what is the cause of this creation? And that's why I bring in the 1/2 plus 1 billion, 1/2 plus 1/2 equals 1 billion divided by 1 billion. There's only one thing of, there's identity there when you remove the incidental. And your mind, body, senses are incidental to who you are, right? So first, to appreciate that Atma Chaitanya, the awareness which is the nature of the self, is ever present and omnipresent, first need to extricate our identity from the anatma, from the not self. And then the appreciation, that's chit, right? You hear the term sat chit ananda, or satyam jnanam anantam brahma. They're synonyms, more or less. And so once I recognize that awareness is the truth of myself, I need to appreciate that the awareness is existence itself. Existence is not an attribute. It's the one sadvastu, it's the one substantive that's here. And I dare you to show me anything of any substance, because everything else comes and goes in time, is a amalgam of different parts, and it has a dependency upon something else. Only awareness has no dependency on anything else, and it's ever present. What experience do you have where you're not there, right? And so even experientially, what is sat, what is real, never comes and goes. That which abides in all three periods of time and is not falsifiable. And everything else is inherently unsubstantial, meaning this body, mind, sense complex, this entire jagat. It's sadasad bhyam anirvachaniyam. I think I talked a lot about that in that discourse, right? We can't say the world is unreal because we experience it, but we can't say it's real because it's in constant flux. And anything that is true is real, that is satyam, that is truly existent, does not come and go in time. And so once one recognizes that chit and sat are the same thing, awareness and existence are the same thing, one can appreciate that existence and awareness is ananta, is limitless. And so we have sat chit ananda. And then that sat chit ananda atma is identical with the jagat karanam, which is Ishvara. And since we have this cause of the creation we call Ishvara, or the Lord. We investigate the relationship of cause and effect. And in the law, to summarize it all, the creation, the product, is not separate from the cause. Just like a pot is not separate from its upadana karana, from its material cause, so too this entire creation is not separate from Ishvara. And I am, when I know who I am, the I that I am pointing to is the same I that Bhagavan points to when he says I. There's only one water. There's only one awareness. And so when that becomes clear, then really the question becomes, how can I not be the Adhisthana, the unhidden, all-pervasive substratum for the entire creation? So the short answer is, finally, when you know the truth of yourself, then the omnipresence of Atma Chaitanya will be clear. Okay. This is like a rapid fire session here. I'm sure more questions will arise from this. All right, through Vedanta, question number 6, through Vedantic study, it is easy to understand about Atma and the body, but why is this so difficult to apply in daily practice, so-called Maya? Let's not talk about Maya, that's a whole different thing. But again, the short answer is, why is it difficult to bring this vision into my daily life? Why is it that this is not my living reality, right? Why? And I think that's what you mean by apply in daily practice. First of all, Vedanta is not to be practiced. The main answer for this is twofold. Why is it not my living reality? It's either due to, one, lack of adhikaritvam, lack of preparedness. If I want to study physics at a postgraduate level, I first have to learn arithmetic, maybe some algebra, and oodles of more mathematics, right? One needs to have the proper preparation for this knowledge to take hold, to be able to see, because Atma is ati sukshma, extremely subtle. Atma is never away from your experience. It's the very truth of the experiencer, okay? And it's ubiquitous. It's sarvagata. It is omnipresent. And Atma Chaitanya, you have no qualities. Even awareness is not a quality. Existence is not a quality. It's a substantive, which we talk about from these different perspectives. So it takes an extraordinarily ati sukshma buddhi, a very subtle mind, to grasp what is being taught and to make it my own in an immediately extremely personal way, right? So it's either lack of preparedness, adhikaritvam, and the questions which pertains to the questions about sadhana chatushtaya and shama dhamma uparitiksha shraddha samadhanam, the first two questions. That is a description of preparedness, adhikaritvam. So it's either I don't see it clearly, or there's continuing vagueness or doubts. It's due to a lack of insufficient exposure to the teaching, to the pramana. Because the primary sadhana in Advaita Vedanta is shravanam, is listening with shraddha. And so when you listen in shravanam, when you listen to someone teaching Vedanta, there necessarily needs to be a suspension of one's presuppositions about what it's all about. My teacher, Swami Dayananda Saraswati, would always say, it's much easier to teach somebody who knows nothing than someone who has a long background in quote-unquote spirituality, because there's so many concepts and so many confusing notions that oftentimes we can't hear or see what's being said because we're looking at the teaching through this filter, right? And so another definition of shraddha, or trust, or faith, is putting aside our cognitive filters based on what we think we know, so we can at least hear what's being said and take it to heart and ask if it's true. And then we can do any sort of meshing or comparison through mananam. So that's the second aspect of the sadhanas. The Dvaita sadhana is basically shravanam, listening. The primary sadhanas, primary spiritual practices, are exposing yourself to a means of knowledge. The Upanishads and Vedanta is considered a means of knowledge for the self. Mananam, and that's shravanam, mananam is the bringing the intellect to bear and removing and gaining clarity, removing doubts, etc. So that's at the phrase at the time that one can bring in other ideas that one has learned and see, question and bring and see what holds true. The tradition itself has built-in question and answer. That's mananam. Even in the commentaries, it's always this dialogue to try to gain clarity. And then the third aspect of the primary spiritual practice is nididhyasana, is taking what you've heard about the self, what you've seen at the time of shravanam, what you've clarified at the time of mananam, and bringing in logic to clarify. You quieten the entirety of your experience, and you bring that knowledge within that quietened space of your mind and see it as clearly as you can. So that's the primary sadhana. There are secondary sadhanas, which I don't mean it to diminish their importance, but the primary sadhanas all focus on gaining knowledge. I should say supplementary sadhanas are those things which prepare you to gain this knowledge. So the Bhagavad Gita, for example, talks about karma yoga, about how do I engage with the world. Yoga karma sukashalam. I want to become one for whom dharma becomes natural, right? Dharma meaning ahimsa, ahimsa paramo dharma. That non-injury and compassion are some of my highest values, right? I want that to come naturally to me. Samachittatvam, an equanimity of mind, right? There's certain shama dhamma, which we may not have time to get to. Those all talk about the preparedness, and they all, the preparedness that is required takes effort, because you're doing something to transform the transformable. Atma is not transformable. Atma is unchangeable. Atma is existence. But in preparation to recognize that, I can transform my desire system, I can transform my character, I can attend to what I speak to ensure what I speak is satyam, hitam, and priyam, is truthful, is pleasant to hear, and is beneficial, right? I can learn to quieten my mind and open my heart, because my heart and my mind are objects which are transformable through action, through certain spiritual disciplines, to be able to see everything as a gift from Ishvara, all my prarabdha, all the unfolding storyline of my life, I see as a gift from Bhagavan. And that frees me. If I see everything as grace, what am I going to complain about, right? It's all grace. And the idea of Ishvara prasada buddhi that's talked about in the Gita, seeing everything as prasada. If you go to the temple and you bring some fruit, your favorite fruit is banana, but after the ritual, the puja, the pujari gives you an apple. You don't throw the apple at the pujari and says, "Now I want the banana." It's all prasada, regardless of your desire, right? Regardless of what your desire says. I love bananas. I hate apples. Look, I have an apple. Life is going to give you apples. Life is going to give you bananas too, but it's going to give you bananas. It's going to give you apples. How gracefully can I receive what comes to me in life? The attitude of seeing Ishvara, the Lord, as the karma paladata, the giver of the results of all my action, that what comes to me is not separate from the sacred, that relieves my heart from the stress, and everything becomes acceptable. Everything is acceptable in my heart. I still may need to do things to pay my bills and floss my teeth, right? But there's an attitude of accommodation, it's an attitude of becoming a relatively big person. Adharma is a function of having a small sense of self. When I want to hurt somebody, if I want to yell at somebody, if I want to steal from somebody, that all comes from a very small sense of self. I need something so much that I'm willing to hurt somebody for it. if you approach life with a relatively big sense of self, now I'm talking about Atma, I'm just talking relatively, right? That you come from a natural cheerfulness and sense of inner abundance, that you can act generously towards others, even if it's just emotionally, right? You allow people to be who they are and you accept who they are. So these are some of the transformations that can happen in one's framing of experience and one's character, one's emotionality, one's subtleness of intellect. All of those go into adhikaratvam, to preparing oneself. And adhikaratvam requires effort because you're changing the changeful. The mind is changeful, subject to change. The heart is changeful. Characters, what I say, how I act in the world, they're all subject to change. And that creates an internal disposition and an internal quietude that allows the teaching to take hold and really become my own. There really is no so the question sort of implies, how do I put it into daily practice? There is no operationalization of self-knowledge. Right? Many of us want to have this knowledge and then operationalize it, right? You want to put it into practice. But again, we're not making pizza. There's no operationalization. I love that word. I just started talking about it this way a couple of days ago. There is no operationalization of self-knowledge. Self-knowledge, Atma Jnanam, operationalizes itself. Meaning that this knowledge naturally expresses itself in one's life as clarity grows and as the teaching becomes increasingly personal. Right? This teaching reveals the most intimate thing about you, that which is even more innermost than your thoughts and your emotions, even your most private thoughts, right? Vedanta doesn't care what those are in form, but that which sits behind and illumines what you think are your most intimate parts of yourself. Atma is even more intimate because it is the truth of the one who is experiencing emotion and thought, etc. And so when the teacher says Tat Tvamasi, you are that, you are the cause of the entire creation, you are the adhisthana, the substratum of the entire creation. The question that should, unless you're jnani or jnanini, unless you're enlightened, the question may be, me? Are you talking to me? I can never remember who's there's an old movie where that's a famous line. Me? You talk to me? You're talking to me? You're saying that the truth of me is the truth of the Lord, the sacred, the entire creation? Yes. You right now. That's what the teaching says. And until that is intimately clear, until when someone says, you are the unhidden substratum of this entire creation, your true nature is limitless, awareness and existence and the source of all joy, until you can say, that's right, then more vichara is needed. More inquiry is needed. And that inquiry takes place usually not on your own, but with a teacher. So two things to keep in mind. One is that, again, we're not making pizza. This is not a theory practice paradigm. It's more like the eyes. The eyes are a means of knowledge for form and color. The ears are a means of knowledge. The sense of hearing is a means of knowledge for frequency and amplitude, right? For sound. The Vedanta is a means of knowledge for yourself that reveals a truth in real time. Through what's called Shabda Pramana, words can reveal the truth about something that is here, present, right now. We usually think words, a teaching, just gives us theoretical knowledge if the subject of that teaching is elsewhere, right? But if the thing to be discovered is right here, words can reveal that thing in real time right here. It's not theoretical. It makes no sense to have theoretical self-knowledge because you are here to be appreciated, right? And so moksha is not, liberation is not a function of action, and that there is no that self. There's always this self. The one who's listening to these words is who we inquire into. This self-existent, self-revealing I-ness, me, that you point to through the first person personal pronoun aham, or I. That's the one we're interested in discovering the truth of, right? There's no cosmic, foreign, distant self, right? Okay, so that was why is it difficult to apply in daily practice? It takes saturation, really, in the teaching, and there are things that can be done. There's things to be done and something to know. Liberation is a function of knowing. Preparation is a function of action. And so those can be tackled simultaneously. I work on, if you look in chapter 13 of the Gita, there's a wonderful set of verses from chapter 13. Amanitvam adambhitvam ahimsak shantirarjavam acharyopasanam shaucham starimatma vinigraha. It lists, Sri Krishna lists these character traits that he encourages us to develop in ourselves so that the teaching can become clear. The sadhana chatushtaya also is a way to present the qualities we want to incorporate into our character, so that this becomes clear. So I would say expose yourself more to the pramana so that the clarity is gained, and then live a life of karma yoga. Karma yoga is not seva. Karma yoga may include seva, but service. But karma yoga is the attitude with which you do, the intention with which you do action, what you contribute to the world, and how you receive the results of action. And the givens in your life are the results of past action. So your child, it all becomes your sadhana, your daily life. A mumukshu, someone who desires liberation, through the practice of karma yoga, transforms one's daily life into a sadhana, into a prayer, right? The more you bring Bhagavan into your life, Ishvara into your life, the closer you are to reality, because there's nothing here but Bhagavan, Ishvara, and the Lord, and that includes you at all levels of your being, right? Your situation, your body, your mind, your senses, and the very heart of you, which is awareness itself. There's nothing here separate from the sacred. And if I can live my life and my values conform to that vision, then that's sort of the fast lane to gaining qualifications. All right, I think we can squeeze in one more. What's the question number 7? Can you please explain Brahma in context to the trilogy of Brahma, Vishnu, and Mahesh? I think I understand Vishnu, Mahesh as Maya and awareness in different forms, but I can't see Brahma associated with any object. Can I see Brahman? I can see Brahman in a Turiya state, but then again, it's not the Brahma of the trilogy. So it's a very natural confusion. Many people are confused about this. There's one word, Brahman, and as a neuter noun, Sanskrit is three genders, lingas: feminine, neuter, and masculine. So when we talk about aham brahmasmi, Mahavakya, I am Brahma, aham brahmasmi, I am Brahma, we're talking about Brahman, which is, it's Sanskrit, but it's Brahma with a short at the end. And so it means that which gives being to the world. Brahman is like the water in that wave ocean analogy, right? Either Brahman or Brahma, or Brahma, some people say it that way, right? It's with a short A at the end. And then Brahman is my true nature. I am Atma Brahma. This self is Brahman. The same word is used in the masculine gender to talk about, and it's absolutely different usage. It's a masculine noun. Oftentimes we'll say Brahma Ji. So it's Brahma, a long A at the end, and then Ji, meaning sir. So it's Brahma Ji, and this Brahma Ji is the Brahma of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. Okay, or Shiva or Maheshwara. So there's this triad, and this is this Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva is the three full presentation of God, a functional decomposition of the model. It's a functional decomposition model of God. We usually think of God as the creator, right? But we forget that there's two other necessary components of creation: sustaining the creation, keeping it going, and then destroying what is to make room for what's to come. And so we personify this in this model. Brahmaji is considered the creator, Vishnu is the sustainer, and Shiva or Maheshwara is the resolver of the destroyer, or the destroyer. But there's only one Ishvara. There's only one Bhagavan. There's only one Lord, which is seen from the perspective of these three ongoing processes of creation, sustenance, and destruction. Okay. And this threefold process can be seen cosmologically. If you look at the way the cosmology that the Sanatana Dharma presents as an endless cycle of creation, sustenance, and dissolution of the universe, occurring over huge time periods. You know, Yuga, Mahayuga, Kalpa, the Brahmaji, you know, the imagery is that Brahmaji goes to sleep and the entire creation is resolved during Pralaya. And then there is the entire creation comes back in creation when Brahmaji, right, the creator wakes up. There's this beautiful imagery regarding that. So you can see Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva occurring sort of at that huge cosmological level, or at every moment. Every moment, everything is in flux. Every experience of the world changes every nanosecond. Drishta Nashta Swabhava said, seen, gone, seen, gone, seen, gone. You know, that which is present at time T1 is different than at the time T2. So, so that's a way to look at Brahman is of Atma. Brahma is different than Brahmaji. And we don't have to talk about Turiya, but Turiya is it's not a state. It's actually another term for Brahman. As it's presented in the Mandukya Upanishad, Atma is not a state. The mind changes state. The awareness which illumines the mind does not change state, and that awareness is called Turiya in the Mandukya Upanishad. So we didn't get to Sadhana Chatushtaya or Shamadhamma Parititiksha Shraddha Samadhanam, or the 1/2 plus 1 equals 1/2 plus 1/2 equals 1 billion divided by 1 billion. I'd be happy to come back for another time to talk about this, or I gave a retreat a couple of years ago in Detroit. I have the audio, I think I have the video, which focuses on this very topic of the sadhana chatushtaya. What are those practices and attributes that we want to nurture in ourselves to gain the adhikaratvam, or the wherewithal, so that this teaching becomes my living reality? I think I took you 2 minutes over.
Swamiji, you talk about the sadhana chatushtaya, and you said you have a video. If you can, let us have it. I will be happy to present all my friends around here, and we'll make it a little retreat, I will call.
Okay, that'd be fine. It is not as dense as what I've been saying in the past hour. What I've been saying, and I appreciate, is dense, and I know I speak quickly, and it presumed a lot of background and understanding. This next, the retreat I gave was to a group of people who didn't have a lot of background in Vedanta, but still the title of the retreat was Vedanta in Everyday Life. And I think that's what a lot of us are looking for, right? And Vedanta in everyday life is, how do I live a life that allows me to become qualified to understand this teaching? And so that's the focus of that 3-day retreat. So I'd be happy to share that with you if you like. So, I see a few familiar faces here too. I don't know if I saw them in New York when we visited you with Swami V, but I do see some familiar faces here.
Yeah. Just for the group of the people, Swamiji is resident in San Diego. has been conducting regular classes on Vedanta, Upanishad, Bhagavad Gita, and one of the most popular subject everybody is learning Sanskrit, Sanskrit beginner, Sanskrit intermediate, and Sanskrit advanced. Everybody is welcome. Pretty soon, Swamiji will be starting Sanskrit for beginners. So as and when that will be available, I will come to know. And those of you who are interested, you can leave your name with me and I will forward to Swamiji so you become the student in that new group. Is there anything, Swamiji, I may say? And by the way, Swamiji himself mentioned, Swamiji has been student of Sri Puja Swami Dayanand Saraswati, and he has started Arsa Vidya Gurukulam. There are 3 Arsa Vidya Gurukulam. One is in Salzburg, Pennsylvania, and one is it in Coimbatore, Swamiji? What?
It's just outside, it's Anaconda, which is just outside Coimbatore. There's another Gurukulam there.
And one maybe in Uttar Pradesh?
Rishikesh. In Rishikesh. Ashram, yeah. There's another one actually in Nagpur.
Okay. So, Swamiji, and those of you who want to understand what is Vedanta, Swamiji spent only, should I say only, 3 full years with service and learning from his guru, Swami Dayanand Saraswati. And thereafter, it has become his life, and that's what he's sharing with us. So we are extremely privileged to have him. I feel such an intrinsic part of development of life and unfolding the beauty of reality. So, Swamiji, all pranam, sir, and I will not let people have questions, because the question, if you still have, you may want to send it to me, because we want to respect the time.
I'd be happy to come back and answer more questions. Maybe at a slower pace.
Oh my God, what we cannot ask anymore. So let me collect the questions, Swamiji, and then we'll set up a time convenient for you, availability yours. And is this Thursday setup okay with you, Swamiji?
Yeah, actually it's fine. I don't have any conflict with any classes.
Okay, so we'll see. Let me collect it. And once I get that Detroit retreat, and that we will study, so we'll have more questions. Depends how many questions I have from today's and the 6-7 lectures we had previously to study.
Yeah, I felt a bit of an obligation to go through as many of those as I could, so I went through fairly quickly. If there can maybe be more follow-up questions that may hit the mark, I wouldn't feel like I need to hit all the questions, and it'd be more of a dialogue. So that would be a nice thing as well.
Wonderful, sir.
So let's close with a prayer.
Yes, please.
Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Sri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Thank you so much for inviting me. It's been nice seeing you and having a chance to share some thoughts with you. All right. Om Tat Sat.
Hari Om Tat Sat.
Thank you, Swami.
What a wonderful session.
Thank you.